Welcome to The Savage Truth with Cicely Davis. I am your host, Cicely Davis.
Hello, America. Welcome back. I'm Cicely Davis, and you have made a wise decision to tune into The Savage Truth. If you're new here, welcome. You're equally as smart. Truly, thank you for joining me. The support and the reach is growing for the show, and I am so very appreciative of that for all you viewers and all you listeners. It has truly been a fun ride. Got a great show for you today, and as always, before we get going, please like, share, subscribe, and leave a positive review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. And let's get at it. Oh, and by the way, do you like my t-shirt? Thank you. It's my new brand, and I'm passionate about America. I'm passionate about America. You all know that. American life, American ways, American traditions, American people, and American fashion. I'm also passionate about the truth, the savage truth. Are you an American savage? Well, you must be, because you've decided to join me today. Moving on. Nikki Haley. Nikki. What are you doing? Why are you doing it? What's the purpose? What's your purpose? What's the message we, the American people, and particularly Republican conservatives, supposed to think or gather from your consistent losses, appearances on Fox News, and slander against the obvious winner of the GOP nomination, Donald J. Trump? Viewers, listeners, I know you've all wondered and have asked the same exact question. What is she doing and why? She's clearly not going to win. So what is she actually doing? What is her true goal here? Because it's clearly not to win. It's clearly not to be part of the Trump administration. I mean, he canceled that possibility of vice president, so that's not an option. Now, there are those who listen to and view The Savage Truth who are Nikki fans. That's okay. I don't mind that. In fact, I welcome it. I welcome you to the show. There are viewers and listeners who favored Ron DeSantis, and I wholeheartedly welcome them as well. But Ron DeSantis did the right thing. You see, he dropped out knowing and accepting the choice of the Republican conservative constituency and joined in the pursuit to rid the country of this ridiculous, corrupt, Marxist, socialist, communist, failing administration. But not Nikki Haley. Oh, no. She's staying in. And I got to say, folks, that this does not and will not play well for her politically in the future. I mean, people have long memories. They will remember this time. They'll remember her comments, her pursuits, these attacks. Nikki Haley is clearly focused on there being a segment of the Republican Party that won't vote for Trump in November, commenting that he can't win a general election. I'm referring to, of course, to Haley's recent loss, again, in Michigan this past Tuesday, as she lost to the former president with a 68 to 26% split. And this has been the trend for Nikki since Iowa. Losing. Definitely losing to the former president, Donald J. Trump. You see, it's important to say his name as much and as often as possible. Donald J. Trump. But truly, she's losing by large margins. So she clearly has other sights in mind. But what? What is the question? Serve on the Biden administration? That's been rumored. I've been hearing some talk about that. At this point, I wouldn't rule anything out where she's concerned. I know there are Democrats out there who are loving her right now, but it's not an actual embracive love. It's a spiteful one. You know, like the Dems who actually fell all over Liz Cheney because they attacked the former president. So, you know, tally it up, everyone. This now marks Trump's sixth, or is it the seventh? I've lost count. He's won so many. Straight victory, consecutive victory, handing yet another loss to Haley ahead of Super Tuesday. I should sadly mention that on the Democrat side of things, in Dearborn, Michigan, Joe Biden easily won the Democratic presidential primary in Michigan on Tuesday. But a protest vote by Democrats angry over his support for Israel's war against Hamas and Gaza's exceeded organizers' expectations. After her bruising defeat, Haley blamed Donald J. Trump for her loss and division in Michigan. And I can assure you this, that this won't win a general election either. But I'm moving on. You know, Savage Truthers, I need a name to refer to you all. You know, fans and followers of the show. You need an identity. Can I call you savages? Savage truth seekers? I don't know. I'll continue to work on that. I'll work on it. But former friend and law partner Terrence Bradley was back on the witness stand earlier this week. Hear me out. Speculating on the romantic relationship between his longtime friend, Special Prosecutor Nathan Wade, and DA Fani Willis of Fulton County. Yeah, I'm referring to the testimony in which Bradley tried to walk back knowledge of the romantic relationship between Wade and Willis. It was cloudy, his testimony giving no dates of the genesis of that relationship, saying he never saw them together, and that any knowledge he had about the relationship came from a single conversation in the back of his office with Nathan Wade. The defense, I think, established quite clearly that Bradley fully understood what was being done with the information, meaning the defense was inquiring about the relationship to establish a time frame of the romance. The defense did a great job of clearly showing that Bradley understood fully what they were doing with the information that he provided, and that he has an obligation to tell the savage truth on that witness stand. There really is no in-between here in this case. He either lied and or speculated when he confessed to Ashley Merchant by text, or he's covering up for DA Willis and Prosecutor Wade, friend and frat brother. The defense asked point blank if he lied about Wade and Willis or if he had told Merchant any lies about Wade and Willis's relationship. Listen, folks, I played this back on YouTube, that moment when he was asked that question, and there is a 13-second pause before he responds. Now, you know that's a lie. Then he repeats the question back. You know when people do that, when they pause and then they repeat the question back because they're really trying to stall. They're trying to buy time. They're trying to formulate some kind of lame answer because the cheese didn't smell right. Okay, that dog ain't hunting. He asked again, and his response was a squinting. You know, it's a, I don't recall. And I mentioned earlier and I speculated on some things, blah, 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 blah. I don't recall if I lied or not. He doesn't recall if he lied or not. He asked as a normal course of, he was asked this question. As a normal course of relationship with your friends, do you pass on lies about your friends? This was the question from the defense. Is that normally something you do, Mr. Bradley? Do you tell lies about your friend? And his answer, I could have. I don't know. Do you tell lies about your friends in a case of national importance? And his answer, I could have. I don't know. And the defense, that particular defense attorney sat down. No further questions, Your Honor. I think it's clear. It's clear indeed. Now, Wade and Willis, if they had any sense, any decency at all, they would step down from this case. This case should have been dropped altogether, if you ask me, and allow us, the people, to get on with this election and the real focus. Because this kangaroo court has closed the curtain on all its star actors, and I'm throwing tomatoes. Boo! Moving on. Oh, there's so much going on always. Mitch McConnell, the U.S. Senate's longest-serving Republican leader, has announced he is stepping down from his leadership position in November. The Kentucky politician said it was time to move on in his address to the Senate on Wednesday. McConnell, 82, has suffered several health scares in the past year, though his staff say that has nothing to do with his decision. He twice froze when speaking during press conferences in the past year, and he suffered a concussion after falling at a hotel in Washington. The Kentucky senator said in his speech that he would serve out his term, which ends in January of 2027, but he would work from a different seat in the chamber. And I quote him, "I still have enough gas in my tank to thoroughly disappoint my critics." Mr. McConnell remains the last member of the congressional Republican leadership not to endorse Mr. Trump's re-election bid, although there were recent reports that a reconciliation was being brokered. And I quote him, "To serve Kentucky has been the honor of my life, and to lead my Republican colleagues has been my highest privilege. But one of life's most underappreciated talent is to know when it's time to move on to life's next chapter." Please say that to Joe Biden. But one of life's most underappreciated talent is to know when it's time to move on to life's next chapter. Meanwhile, President Joe Biden told reporters that he had maintained a great relationship with Mr. McConnell, though they often, quote, fought like hell. "I'm sorry to hear he's stepping down," Joe Biden added. "It is uncertain who might next lead the Senate Republicans, but there are 3 successors commonly mentioned in Washington, and that is John Cornyn of Texas, John Barrasso of Wyoming, and McConnell's second-in-command, John Thune of South Dakota." Now, it's about time the man stepped down, if you ask me. This party needs a refresh. I appreciate his service. That being said, we could stand to lose a few more, to be honest, but that's just me. Joe Biden needs to take a hint from his friend. Step down. Leave on your own recognizance. Whether he was urged or pressured matters not. The bottom line is he is doing so without a lot of drama and resistance, and that shows a lot about him. His character and his willingness to recognize his time of service has come to pass. So thank you, Mr. McConnell. Now get your friend Joe Biden to close that border, okay? And speaking of the border, there's an invasion, as you all know. There's an invasion in the U.S. Foreign invaders, and I am speaking specifically of those who are of ill intent. I'm talking about gang members and rapists, murderers, thieves, vandals, etc. Land and properties have been vandalized, police and other law enforcement attacked, and citizens killed. And I want to take this time right now to recognize and bring forward some names of victims. I'm sure there are more that didn't make the news feed, those who have been trafficked or raped, assaulted. I'm talking about those who have fallen victim to fentanyl overdoses, and etc. 2-year-old toddler, a baby, okay, Jeremy Poo Carreras of Maryland was caught in a crossfire between 2 groups involved. And get this, folks, a territorial dispute over drug dealing in Langley Park. I'm talking about Nilson Granados Trejo, 25, an illegal immigrant from El Salvador, was charged with murder in the shooting death of the toddler. Jeremy's 17-year-old mother was also injured. And Laken Riley, a student at Augusta University, was allegedly murdered by 26-year-old Jose Ibarra, an illegal immigrant from Venezuela, while she was jogging along dirt trails near Lake Herrick in Athens in what UGA police described as a crime of opportunity. Riley was out on her morning run at the University of Georgia when authorities say a stranger dragged her into a secluded area and killed her, sending shockwaves through campus as police search for a suspect. The arrest of a Venezuelan man who entered to the U.S. illegally and was allowed to stay to pursue his immigration case put the tragedy at the center of the 2024 presidential campaign. My condolences to the families and loved ones of these victims, and again, the countless others who did not make the newsfeed. I think it's clear to the American people, all of you listening and watching, when it comes to the border and the border crisis, the invasion of our country, that this has been in effect since Joe Biden has taken office, and that he and his administration are not at all interested in shutting down our borders. There's no interest in protecting Americans from vandalism, from crime, or drug overdoses. As I've said before, and I'll say it again, Joe Biden erased 94 actions of protection over our country from this invasion. He has the power right now to enact executive orders to stop this and refuse to do so. All he would have to do is to maintain the status quo. All he would have to do is literally reinstall the policies that were in place when he took office, and this issue would be significantly reduced. But he is beholden to his far-left party members who wish to fundamentally and erratically change America from the inside out, and this is a part of that plan. You know, when you're a candidate, and I can tell this, I can honestly be a witness to this, when you're a candidate, you're always asked by your constituents, what would you do about this issue or that issue? And if I were in position to impact this issue in particular, I would simply go back to the policies of the former president, Donald J. Trump, that he had in place and reinstall Remain in Mexico. That's first. Secondly, I would tell Mexico, as President Trump did, deploy your military to stop your people from crossing that border. If you do not, we will put a tariff on everything you send to the United States. And thirdly, I would remind the Border Patrol of their jobs, their duties. You're no longer in the hotel hospitality business. You are to turn people right back around and send them back across the river. There is no welcoming committee at our border. I mean, what exactly did Joe Biden think was going to happen when you allow 10+ million people unvetted into our country? Criminals, drug dealers, rapists, murderers, smugglers, pedophiles, thieves, gang members, potential terrorists, etc. And I'm not saying that all those people are, but a great majority of what we're seeing in crime right now, it reflects back to Joe Biden and his administration. I mean, Venezuela basically emptied out their prisons and they have merged into our communities. There is indeed blood on the hands of this entire administration, and the leader, the one who made it possible and rendered us vulnerable to attacks, disease, crime, and death, is without a doubt Joe Biden. He is too old and too weak to lead a conga line, let alone lead this country. And when I think of the offensive and unacceptable terms of this previous so-called proposal, I get good, right, and angry. Because if you can close the border at 5,000, you can close it at 0. So the state park in Texas, once Governor Abbott decided to maintain the protection of Texans and reinforce the wire, they went from thousands a day to 9 a day. So that proves that this can be done. There's interest in Governor Abbott in actually protecting Americans, protecting the border, and protecting Texas citizens. The illegal murderer who took Riley's life crossed the border illegally in El Paso and was paroled in the country in September of 2022, along with tens of thousands of others who could be a ticking time bomb waiting for their opportunity to take the life of yet another American. Your daughter, your son, your nieces, your nephews, your granddaughters, your grandsons, you get my point. Biden clearly feels nothing for the victims of these illegals. All of the deaths that have occurred on the Biden administration's watch with just the southern border alone. And now, as Trump announces he will be going to the border, Joe Biden decides to make this all about politics and chase Trump to the border after all the lives have been lost. After his so-called border czar, VP Kamala Harris, wouldn't go to the border. Absolutely unbelievable. They want millions to come here, become citizens, to remain in control and redefine our country. Destroy it to create a communist dystopia where the far-left elite and greedy globalists will rule and we have no rights. Living in a sanctuary state, Minnesota, I understand what the dangers are. But again, when you talk about 10 plus million illegals, it is indeed an invasion, without a doubt. And every state now is a border state. I am fed up. I'm sure you're fed up. And now it seems even some Democrats are fed up with a late buyer's remorse sentiment with regard to this border crisis. Now, Mayor Eric Adams of New York said back in October of 2021, and I want to remind you of what he said back in October of 2021, we should protect our immigrants, period. Yes, New York City will remain a sanctuary city under an Adams administration. Now, his tune has changed quite a bit, a complete 180. After the crime, the outrage, and the recognition that he could be held to the fire by his constituents and lose his seat, Eric Adams is calling for an end to sanctuary cities as New York City struggles to care for close to 200,000 migrants, illegals, who've arrived in the last 18 months. So let me slow this down and come down from my outrage, these no-count leaders that we have. And I have to do this because it's worth mentioning as we close out Black History Month, a Black mayor, for those who need to cling to the fallacy that Blacks don't get opportunities in high leadership. This is a brother, okay, failing miserably. But I digress. With predominantly his own people falling as victims to crimes that he was so soft on. Okay, so slowly, so we can get to this, let me state this in this way. New York Mayor Eric Adams has called for a radical overhaul of its sanctuary city status in a spectacular U-turn as the city buckles under the weight of migrant arrivals. The Democrat Socialist leader has faced a furious backlash as schools, hotels, and community centers have been turned over to 200,000 migrants who he has warned will destroy the city. As a reminder, he has been a staunch defender of its decade-old sanctuary status, which forbids city officials from asking questions about a person's immigration status or revealing it to federal authorities. But he revealed his change of heart after furious residents grilled him about migrant crimes, including January's brutal Times Square attack on 2 police officers that saw most of the suspects freed on bail within hours of their arrest. And I quote him, "We need to modify the sanctuary city law that if you commit a felony or a violent act, we should be able to turn you over to ICE and have you deported." You cannot make this stuff up. This is what he said to a town hall meeting on Monday night. And as for a little history, more than 560 cities, states, and counties have declared themselves sanctuary cities since the early 1980s. And New York adopted the status under former Democrat Mayor Ed Koch. Sanctuary cities have been a favorite target of governors on the southern border who have bussed thousands of migrants north to them as the migration crisis has gathered steam. Now listen to this. Police in the city are not allowed to arrest anyone because they're an illegal immigrant, and the city will not cooperate with any investigation by immigration authorities unless ordered by a court. Oh, and let's not forget about the debit cards. He faced more pressure this week over his plans for a $53 million debit card scheme that could give a family of migrants with 2 children under the age of 17 up to $15,200 a year. Adams admitted earlier this month that he would use his executive authority to override some sanctuary positions if he were allowed, as he was challenged by Republican city councilors. But the Legal Aid Society said reform would criminalize the innocent. Here's what they had to say about the consequences if Adams were to actually exercise his executive authority. I mean, listen to this nonsense. And I quote them. What Mayor Eric Adams seeks would result in local law enforcement being able to transfer New Yorkers merely suspected of a crime to ICE upending local criminal court proceedings while perpetuating family separation and dividing communities. In other words, we need to keep the illegals here. Don't rock this boat or step in to protect New York City citizens from invasion. So, it's Savage Truth time. We're in trouble because we have an inept presidential administration through and through that has run amok on our economy, ignores the Constitution altogether, erased our borders, and rendered us vulnerable to our global enemies. Now, I ask you, as a nation, if your economy is in serious decline, almost near collapse, your borders no longer exist, and your identity is in question with nothing that defines or distinguishes your strength, would you panic with the belief that either war or extinction is on the verge? Now, I'm a positive person, so I will not leave you this episode on a negative note because America has been here before. But it was the people who came together to save her identity, her ideals and values, and her promise and way of life. That's what we get to do this coming November. Listen, I'm all about competition, and I understand that there will always be Democrats in this country. But there were Democrats in the country in 1984 when 49 out of 50 states voted red. And we can do that again. And understand this, folks. This is really important when I say that there were Democrats and Republicans in the country in 1984 and 49 out of 50 states voted red. What that means is that though there were political differences in view, the people had a general consensus on what still fundamentally was important to them: the future of this country, the future for themselves and their children, leaving a legacy, the honor of law. And we had a country that, when it came to the majority thought, we believed in saving America. We have that chance to do that this coming November. Am I a Donald J. Trump fan? Yes, obviously, absolutely. But I am because at the end of this glorious American day, I want life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness to reign. I want choice and freedom, and I want the longest reigning document in the world to remain the most unique and spectacular reigning document of freedom. Let's get back to being number one. Please like, share, subscribe, and leave a positive review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. And remember, as always, be bold, be strong, be faithful, be true. Till next time, I'm Cicely Davis.
The Savage Truth with Cicely Davis is a production of Front Page Magazine and the David Horowitz Freedom Center. Reproduction of this podcast without express written consent is prohibited.